You're listening to The Disconnect, a podcast about anxiety and how it disconnects you from your normal self. We're here to share our journey and help you through yours to show you you're not alone. And now, your hosts, Austin Grant and Lindsay Jones. Welcome to episode 4 of The Disconnect. If you're just tuning in for the first time, in previous episodes thus far, we've covered what anxiety has looked like for us during our childhood and how it's manifested into high school, what it looked like through college, and today we're going to talk about our experience with anxiety once we graduated.
As a general reminder, Austin and I are not medical professionals. As a disclaimer, nothing we say on the podcast should be taken as medical advice, and we always want to recommend seeking out professional medical help for any diagnosis or treatment.
I think one of the biggest reasons graduating causes so much anxiety is because of this stigma that our society has placed on loan repayment and this crisis that the government's created, I guess. Yeah, we can blame the government, right?
Yeah, blame the government when in doubt.
And like this idea that you have to know what you're doing with your life. If you don't have a job once you graduate, you're gonna be broke. You're not gonna be able to afford your loans. You're not gonna be able to afford your your rent, your bills, and provide for your family. And so, but I think most of it, you're graduating and you no longer that financial aid, the loans and stuff that you're receiving that you just, check a box and you can get for 4 years. All of a sudden 4 years catches up to you and you're like, okay, what do I do now? And I think that's kind of what a lot of the stress comes from, is that idea of those loans, because the interest is growing and the debt's piling up. And so we were doing some research and we found that an article on Forbes mentions that 66% of students attending a public institution have student loan debt. The average amount owed from attending a public university was $25,550. Yikes.
There's an article on studentloanplanner.com that conducted a mental health survey of students who had student loans, and it found that of the students who had loans, their mental health was greatly impacted by their debt. And 12% of the survey respondents actually said that their monthly payments were the top cause of their mental health issues. So that is speaking volumes to what the current generation is going through in terms of graduating from college and facing mountains of debt that they've probably never experienced prior to this point. And you go from being a student who's graduated high school and you're bright-eyed and going into college, which is a super exciting time, and the university makes it incredibly easy to get yourself into massive amounts of debt, with sometimes little to no understanding of maybe what that means, because at least for me, I didn't learn anything about interest rates or how debt is managed when I was in high school. There was no financial classes. I don't know about you, but there were no financial classes that we had to take that talked about anything like that. So when I was taking out my loans, I was like, oh yeah, interest, that's a thing, but I had no idea how it was accrued or how loans are repaid or anything like that. And so graduating wasn't necessarily, my experience with my loans graduating wasn't necessarily the typical experience, but I do think about them and they do impact my everyday life, because it's impacting my ability to get a house. It's impacting my ability to get a car or to do all these things that, society has expected of us to do. And so that's a massive, massive thing that I don't think we're talking about as a society.
And for me too, I think just the ability to, in my case, I had some scholarships and stuff, and I had school covered, and had a little bit extra, sent my way that I could use for, books and stuff and everything. But honestly, I mean, the ability knowing, okay, if something happens, I can just take out the loan and then I'll be good, for that year or that semester or whatever it was. And so, kind of that idea of, growing up, I was working in high school, but was really not making much because I wasn't working much. And so, get into college and, 18 years old, you're, like you said, new beginning, new friends, and, um, they flash that fat stack of cash in your sights, and you just lock onto it, and you're like, I mean, like college students are chomping at the bit. It's a couple extra $1,000 that people can use, and um, I mean, I think at this point it's getting abused more than it is doing them any types of favor.
Mm-hmm.
But and I mean, I think for me, I wasn't too stressed about the loans. I started working full time a couple weeks before I graduated. Um, I just found out that I got accepted in the master's program, and so I knew my loans were still going to be deferred. So it was kind of like, oh, another 2 years, and then I'll figure it out. Um,
But at that point, it becomes like that's a problem for me for the future.
yeah,
Like and then eventually it becomes out of sight, out of mind until you're kind of faced with that when you eventually do graduate with your master's degree. You have to face that reality all over again, and you might not be in any better position to pay back those loans or even know what you still want to do with your life. Like, I don't know what I want to do still.
yeah.
And I've been graduated from undergrad for like, oh, I don't know, 3 years now. Like, it's been 3 or 4 years. Like, it's been a minute since I've been in my undergrad, and I haven't thought about my loans because I've been in a master's program.
And I think for me too, it's just like that's gonna come regardless of what you do. And I mean, the sooner you start to pay it off, the better. Because if you just get that mindset where it's, I mean, I'm all about like that sounds like a problem for tomorrow and procrastinating and everything. But then you think of these interest rates and all of that. I mean, your $15,000 debt can turn into $70,000
Mm-hmm.
in a short time frame, and that's if you're making those payments. And so that just creates stress even more. And then you're sitting there thinking about why you even did that degree in the first place. And so I think for me, the biggest thing starting the job, I knew I was going to be in that master's program. I had the financial security of being employed, and I think financial security is something I've prioritized and focused on most of my life, just because it's, just growing up, I just developed that and wanted to make sure that, my family has stuff. And now that I'm older, taking care of them and making sure alleviating any struggle that I can. But that sense of security is just, I mean, I think a lot of people nowadays, and even on that student loan website or the student loan planner, we saw, people just getting stuck in jobs because it pays the bills and they hate the job.
Mm-hmm.
And most times it barely pays the bills, but they can't get anything else, and so it's just this never-ending cycle that just creates a lot of anxiety. And so I think, I mean, it's totally common for people in today's day and age to be stressing about that. And yeah, I mean, it's a huge thing that's going on right now. But I mean, for those of you guys listening out there, whether you're in high school, you graduated college, you're going back to college after some time off, all the power to you. Like, work hard. It's totally possible, even in today's day and age, to working hard, avoiding that debt and getting that degree still.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to pay off in the long run, and it's, don't don't be selling yourself short and signing that piece of paper that's so simple to do. Most things in life like that don't come so easy, so it's better just to wait and do the best you can with that. But
I think a big moral of the story is financial literacy, is really doing the research and understanding kind of what it means to take out certain loans, um, and what that entails. What is repayment going to look like? Like they have the studentloans.gov has the entrance counseling that all students are required to take. But when you're taking it and you're 18 and you just want to go and hang out with your friends and you don't really want to talk about loans and you don't want to talk about interest rates, and it's the summer before you go to college and it's like you feel like it's your last summer before you go to college, you want to have as much good time with your friends as you can, and you're not really paying attention to what they're saying to you, to prepare yourself for your future and to be kind of the best version of yourself in the future. I think it's very, very advisable to actually sit down and take that entrance counseling seriously, and kind of go through what they're telling you and pay really close attention to how interest rates are accrued, and do the research about the difference between the loans that you might be offered, and don't be so quick to sign up and just get it over with because you want to go do something else, but really kind of hold yourself to it and learn about what you're actually getting yourself into. Like, we are so quick to press the I accept all terms and conditions button, but when it comes to things like loans or buying a house or buying a car, we really gotta, I think, as a society, pay more attention to what we're actually agreeing to.
it's that instant gratification. All right, check here, and the car's yours. Boom, done.
That's right.
Wait, this is the car I signed up for. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you didn't have the typical graduating college experience, and whereas I started full time a couple weeks before graduating, you started was it your junior year?
Yeah, so I started working full time. I guess it was more of like my first senior year, because I had two of those because I was a super senior. But the last 2 years that I was in my undergrad, I was working full time. And I did have the saving grace of having transitioned to online for that time. So I could manage to work 40 plus hours a week and still be able to do my classes. And that was probably the biggest source of my anxiety, was spending a majority of my time at work and then having to come home and do homework, and didn't really have much time for anything else. And I'll kind of talk about later why I specifically had to get a job during that time of my life, because it's a big reason. So stay tuned for that in the future. It'll all make sense eventually. But yeah, when I graduated my undergrad, it didn't really impact me. Like, it didn't really have like an impact on my life like I think normal trajectory people have, because I was already working full time. I already had an apartment. I already did all that stuff. I was more or less a fully functioning adult. Kind of looking back on it now, I feel like I was such a child at that time. I feel like a child now, but I was so young and I had absolutely no idea what I was doing, and I still really don't. But I jumped right into a master's program. For one of the big reasons was to kind of defer my loans. But I wasn't really anxious about them because, again, kind of like you were saying before, it's a problem for future me. And then now, being kind of past that and kind of a few years down the road, I'm realizing now, like, the impact that my loans have on my life, because I want to buy a house. I want to I want to go buy a car. I want to do all these things, and it's impacting my income to debt ratio, right? Like, I have so many loans compared to how much money I make that they won't give me very much in terms of a mortgage, right? So I can't buy the house that I want. Versus if I didn't have the loans, I would be totally fine. Like, I've had conversations with so many um, so many mortgage agents where they're like, well, if you didn't have these student loans, you would probably be able to afford this house that you're looking at. And it's really, really hard to be faced with that. And like for me, I kind of had to take out loans. Like I had to take them out to just live my life. Like I was supporting myself and another person, and I had to, do these things because I couldn't pay my bills with the money that I was earning. So I was kind of in a in a rock and a hard place with taking out loans, but I think in hindsight, if I could do it differently, I would probably have taken some time off from school and not graduated in the time frame that I did. Of course, that would definitely change where I'm sitting right now, of course, but if I could go back and do it all again, like it's okay to take time away from school. It's okay to kind of save up some money and not jump right into going to college, or if you need to take some time off and go save some money, then that's absolutely okay.
Man, I think too, it's better, like you said, if you're saving up, if you can afford it, there's always cheaper options, and there's always this pressure that people put in terms of you have to attend the biggest schools, you have to attend the most popular schools, the ones with the best sports teams, the nicest campus, and the list goes on. But with that, if you got to, taking the time off and everything, but on the other side, like if in my case, like I had the scholarship and it was only good for the 4 years, so I had in my mind, like if I lost that scholarship, I was out. I couldn't go back to school. I couldn't afford it. So that was kind of like a intrinsic motivating like factor to me that okay, you got to get the good grades. You got to work hard to keep the scholarship. You only got it for a limited time, so you got to finish in that time. And so that kind of um, sparked an interest in me and motivated me to finish. And then I think personally for me, once I graduated, I was already working at that time, and then I mean, kind of like you were saying, like I had that mentality, like okay, well, now I can go on to get my master's, or I could take a year off. A lot of people take gap years, and specifically people in my degree, exercise science, most people are going to PT schools, they're going to PA schools, they're going to med schools, and some get in right away, some it takes several times, and others don't get in it at all. But through that process, they're taking a gap year, they're taking 2 years, they're taking, however much time, one, to try and mentally prepare for it, but two, just simply trying to get in the admissions process. And that in itself is stressful. But for me, I knew that if I took a year off after graduating and just worked full time, it's going to be that much harder. So I was like, all right, you just got to, while you're in the, you're in that mentality right now, you've done it for the last couple of years. What's a year or two longer really going to do? And so, looking back, it's, I really kind of wish I would have taken a little bit of a break, just because it allows myself time to just, reset and prepare for that next stage in my life, the adulting that no one wants to do. And so working full time, and it didn't really feel like I graduated, because that summer of 2018 felt like any other summer. I was used to working full time in the summer in between school semesters, and then it wasn't really until August of that year when school started, and then I started the online master's program. And for me, that was the first time I was doing online full time, at least. And then it was very difficult doing that 8 to 5, and then finding the time from 5 to whenever whenever you're going to bed, to cram in the homework, to cram in making the dinner, doing extracurriculars or whatever else you got going, relationships. And like for me, like, I wanted to spend time with Jess. I wanted to, go out and hang out with friends and stuff, but there's only limited time, and then the weekends it's like, okay, cool, great. I have a lot of time on the weekends, and at that point you're just so tired, you're just like, I'm just going to sleep in, and then, you just lay around and get lazy. But, yeah, I mean, it's just like that grind, I couldn't, like leaving college, I was like, oh, I just got to grind it out, get it finished. But then I'm just like, looking back, I'm like, I should have just slowed down a little bit, like that grind can only go so far. And I mean, it's good to just get it out of the way, but at the same time, all of this stuff that we've endured and experienced in the last year, it's, self-care is so important. At that time, I wasn't doing any of that, like at all. Like I was just grinding it out. I was drinking caffeine like through the roof, a couple cups of coffee a day, like didn't like just straight. I mean, I was like cruising through this and started the master's program, and it was a weird adjustment, and like I just didn't even take time to dwell on it or think about what I was doing. I was just like staring at the light at the end of the tunnel and just like, all right, well, we just got to get there and then figure it out from there. But I mean, as we'll continue to talk about in the next couple episodes, that doesn't always go so well, and can have some, pretty harsh effects on, your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health, all of the above. And you're basically driving that car on empty, like down to the last drop, and then it just craps out.
I think another good point with that is being patient with yourself when you don't know what you want to do, because I think a lot of another big contributor to anxiety for people who are graduating is not knowing what they want to do. I mean, some people graduate and they're like, yeah, I absolutely know I want to be an accountant, or I want to, go be a nurse. I want to do X, Y, or Z. But there are people in the population like myself who have absolutely no idea what they want to do still. Like they haven't. I mean, I've found the podcast, which is like basically the thing that I've been the most passionate about ever in my entire life. But my undergrad, I liked doing my undergrad. I liked doing speech pathology, but it wasn't something I could see myself doing for forever. And so you kind of graduate after having spent so much money and so much time dedicated to this thing that you might not actually want to do. That I think that is another big contributor to anxiety. And I don't think people say it enough, but it's okay to not know what you want to do, and you just have to give yourself some grace in those moments of like, it's okay to not know, and I'll figure it out. I've figured it out thus far, so why can't I keep figuring it out for the next couple years? And then really like trying as many different things as you want. Like it took Austin forever to actually talk me into doing the podcast. Because I hate the sound of my own voice. Like it's torture to me to like go back and edit these podcast episodes, because I absolutely cannot stand the sound of my own voice, which I mean is probably pretty normal. I don't think a lot of people like the sound of their own recorded voice, but with the exception of Emily out there, if she's listening. Hi, Emily. But
Frank loves your voice.
But I mean, it took him forever to talk me into doing this, and after doing it and really putting together everything that we've done and talking about all the things that we've talked about and the potential that this podcast has for positive impact in the world around us, I absolutely fell in love with what we're doing. And so I found my passion, and I think like trying as many different things, even if they make you horribly uncomfortable, trying as many different things and getting out of your comfort zone as you possibly can really leads to that finding what you want to do with your life and can alleviate some of that anxiety. It might cause you more anxiety in the beginning, but I think overall just trying different things can really help you understand what you want to do.
Well, that was kind of my mentality going into this master's program. I mean, I'd graduated with exercise science and really only done science most of my life. And when I realized I didn't know if I wanted to go to med school or chiropractor school or PT school, I was in that spot where I was like, well, I don't know what I want to do, and I thought I knew I was going to do this, and I was kind of not worrying about it because I knew, I'm just going to go to med school or the chiropractor school, and then I'll be making enough money that I won't have to worry about it. But then that time came, I graduate, and I'm not doing that, and I find myself working the 8 to 5 job and doing this program online, and it's a healthcare management program, so it's business, something that I had little to no experience with, but it was something that correlated a little bit with my undergrad, and so I pursued that, and I mean, for the first couple months, like I was saying, it wasn't too bad. It was a weird adjustment, and then we kind of got into the swing of things, and I mean, the hardest thing and the thing that caused the most anxiety at first was those proctored tests being
those are
stared
awful.
at, logging in and having someone watch you for 3 hours, take a test in a room that has to have no other living soul in there. Like your dog is just going to spill the answers out for you, and they don't trust anything, and you probably can't even have a plant. They're going to be like, nah, that's a living organism, you can't have that.
Oh yeah, that one time where I was taking that proctored exam and they got mad at me because my dog was on the couch next to me. They're like, what is that? Who is that? Who's in the room with you?
You ever heard of a dog?
It's like,
he's actually deaf.
Oh yeah,
so
he can speak English. He's feeding me answers right now. It's amazing. I should not be doing this master's program because I could sell him to the circus because he can speak.
Yeah, it's that was weird to get used to, because most of these online programs, you can take the tests at your leisure, and so that's what I was looking forward to. And then when I found out we have to just log in and stare at this human and have them watch us while we're taking this, I've dealt with test anxiety in college, but not to that degree. You can't even go to the bathroom. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, come on, man. It's just not fun. And so that was weird getting used to. But overall, I mean, the program itself, it's relatively straightforward. A lot of kinks need to be worked out just because it's a brand new program. But, I mean, we're rolling with the punches. I think we're hanging in there thus far. And it's been super exciting. And, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's another reason why I started this master's program with you, is because
you should tell them the story of how I convinced you first, if we're on the topic of me persuading you to do things.
Austin just convinces me to do all kinds of things. Someday he's going to convince me to jump off a cliff. He's going to convince me to go bungee jumping with him, even though I'm horribly afraid of heights, and it's probably going to be the best experience of my life.
If you want to see Lindsay and I go bungee jumping, send us an email.
Oh my God, no.
And DM us on Instagram.
No, I don't want to go bungee jumping. Anyway, that's beside the point. Tangential.
If this episode gets 250 likes on Instagram, we're going bungee jumping. Yeah, you heard it. It's already live. It's out there.
No.
You heard it first.
Oh no.
And oh wow, that's great.
Wow, I shouldn't have brought up bungee jumping.
That's exciting.
I have all the regrets. Should be thinking
250. Make it happen.
Should think with my brain before I talk. But in terms of you convincing me to do things, how did that go? I was bored.
So I'm pretty sure that I got accepted, or I just applied, And then you were talking about, oh, hey, I'm done.
Oh yeah,
Finally free.
I'd finished my first program,
And
my first master's.
I was like, oh, well,
And
what
I
are you going to
was
do with your time now? And you're like, I don't know. And I was like, you want to do this master's with me? It's brand new. You could probably get accepted.
Yeah.
And you're like, sure, why not? And here we are.
It's like the weirdest, like, spur of the moment kind of thing that I've ever done. But I mean, it's really helped to give me perspective on
Accounting and why you love it so much.
Oh, accounting gives me so much anxiety. Oh, Lord.
Fun fact, the peak of my anxiety started around the time when I was in the middle of my accounting class. We'll touch more on that in the next episode. No correlation at all, huh?
Oh, none. Yeah, accounting, something I'm awful at.
If you love accounting, then let's be friends, because no, I do not like that.
Honestly, though, taking accounting, I'm just impressed that I can manage my own finances. Like, taking that accounting class, put into perspective, like, do not put me in charge of your money because I will mess it all up. 100%. It's a miracle that I can manage my own finances. But, I mean, starting that program has really put into perspective a lot of the things that I thought I was interested in. Like, I've always kind of worked in the administrative side of things. And so I thought, well, why not kind of look at what the administrative side of healthcare would be like. And while I don't think I would be bad at it, it's definitely something that I don't feel passionate about. But it took being in this master's program to understand that, to say, like, I can't do everything. Like, there are things that I'm going to be bad at. And so really being in this master's program, while it has taught me a lot of skills, I don't know if I will ever go into hospital administration because I'm okay at it, but I don't like it. It doesn't feed my soul, I guess. That's the best way I can put that.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I think it's still something I do want to pursue. I've always been drawn to healthcare in some capacity, but yeah, so in that first semester went pretty well. Second semester was still going pretty steady, and then kind of right around the end of the second session of the spring semester, it was just like, well, this is kind of like, I think we were in finance at that time. Taking finance and then taking accounting, it was just like, we kind of had a rough 16 weeks ahead of us.
Yeah, it was one really hard class after another.
But yeah, I mean, we'll kind of dip into how summer 2019 looked like for us and start talking about why it is that we're doing this show, and if you're lucky, we may introduce Frank, but you'll have to stay tuned. So
as promised, we like to end every episode with a quote, and today's quote is from Oprah Winfrey and goes like this: "Sometimes you find out what you're supposed to be doing by doing the things you're not supposed to do." For me, this quote really stands out because I feel that is exactly how I fell into the podcast. I didn't think that I would ever be somebody who would record my voice or give life advice or do anything along these lines of being like a quote-unquote internet personality. That was always, being an introvert, that was always way out of my comfort zone. And so when Austin, kind of like I was talking about before, approached me and was like, hey, we should really do a podcast, it took me a really long time to make up my mind about whether I actually wanted to go through with it. And I can honestly say that it's probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. Just in terms of like my mental health, it brings me such a sense of joy to be able to talk about things and share my perspective with you guys, and really working with it with Austin has been an incredible experience. The amount of things that we've just learned is astronomical. And I'm really, really excited to kind of keep going with the podcast. But it was definitely one of those things that I didn't think that I should be doing. And here we are.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Just thinking back, if I were to make the decision to go to chiropractic school or move away from Flagstaff or anywhere else, I would have ended up doing. And it's kind of just weird how things kind of fell into place at that point, and we have found something we're passionate about, and we're so stoked and excited to continue this journey with you guys. And so speaking of that, we would definitely love to get to know you guys and hear your stories. And with that, I mean, we always like to end each episode with a quote. So if there's any quotes that you guys like, or there's one that's really standing out to you that day or that week, please let us know. Go ahead and DM us on Instagram or Twitter at FrankDisconnect. Just an update, we have made a brand new email for you guys to send questions or suggestions to for episode topics. That email is askfrank@frankdisconnect.com. Lastly, please go ahead and follow us on Spotify and iTunes. We'd love it if you'd leave us a review as well. Just want to thank you guys again for listening. Tune in next time for another episode of The Disconnect.